it's been magical, dramatic, stressful, extremely challenging, and totally rewarding. All of those sort of in sequence. When we went there, first I couldn't believe just the sheer beauty and spirituality of the place. My first encounter, sitting on a lawn waiting for Aaron to come back and pick me up. An old Rasta man walks by and he looks over the fence where I'm waiting, and he looks me up and down, you know, big dreads, and he says, "Good morning, star child." And I'm thinking, where am I? Is this heaven? You know? And everything was so beautiful. Aaron had rented this beautiful house on the water, on a private cove, a sweet little cottage, which happened to be where Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller had their honeymoon, and Peter Finch had lived there. It was not fancy, but it was sweet. So we lived there for a couple of years. The first child was born, Benjamin was born. And people kept coming from New York, you know, old friends at first. They started coming from New York because we had this cool place. So anyway, it was very serendipitous, and then it got very political. Michael Manley ran for office. We at first believed in him, and we campaigned for him, and then it got totally chaotic and tumultuous and turned into the state of emergency, which was bloody and brutal and pretty unbelievable, even when I think about it now. It's hard to imagine that went on in Jamaica, because it was so contradictory to the culture and the fiber of the country. So then the kids were born, and they grew up in a bit, when they were young, they grew up in a bit of that melee, you know, in that time of danger and uncertainty. Certainly violence was everywhere. I mean, you could hear machine gun fire at night, you're trying to get to sleep, you don't know where it is. Anyway, eventually that did come to an end. Kids grew up, they did well. Aaron had a lot of struggles because because he went there trying to implement modern urban planning practices. And there were entrenched interests who just really didn't want to see progress in the country. The people stayed poor and ignorant. It suited them just fine. So he had to struggle against all of these forces. And it has taken all these years to get beyond that point. In the meantime, he did some wonderful work for inner cities, but in inner city neighborhoods. But aside from that, he also did things which were tremendously successful, such as the land use plan for the Cayman Islands, which he did 40 years ago and has made them prosperous. So it's had its challenges, it's had its tragedies, and it's had its triumphs, but that's life.